Look on Facebook today, I noticed this post by this amazing woman, Mary, and this is her on the picture now. And I read through what she had to say about the pyramids of Egypt, and it motivated me to write a rather long response. And then I contacted her and I said, could I read your post on my channel? And she said, yeah, sure, go ahead. So I'm going to read you her comment, her post, and also my response. On her post, she said, the pyramids of Egypt have been a feature on Earth's surface for thousands of years. They are still a talking point of millions of people, but the reason for their construction is still a hotly debated subject. But ever since Egyptology sprang into life, there has always been a counter-argument. No mummies have ever been found inside, not one. So how could they be tombs? At the end of the old kingdom of ancient Egypt, the country was tearing itself apart. Drought, famine, civil instability, and a general decline in pharaonic power led to the looting and pilfering of the Great Pyramids. It is naive to think that after almost 5,000 years, the bodies of the dead kings of Egypt would remain untouched and in situ. There aren't any hieroglyphs either. Usually Egyptian tombs were adorned top to bottom in hieroglyphs, paint, inscriptions, cartouches, and funerary texts. But the Great Pyramids are bare. It could be that adorning walls with hieroglyphs and inscriptions at that time just wasn't fashionable. But it begs the question, why didn't later generations decorate the inside walls with hieroglyphs? Why didn't later pharaohs leave their cartouches inside? These are questions that have bothered scholars for hundreds of years. Other hypotheses for their construction include ancestor worship, like the megalithic structures on Easter Island. The pyramids were built in correlation to the constellation of Orion, or a huge granary used for making and storing huge amounts of food, and even the idea that they were ancient power plants. She ends the post by saying, "What do you think?" And of course, that was an invitation to me. So I responded. And my response was thus. I've had many dreams on this subject, so I'll just share my opinion on the Great Pyramid based on my dreams. The Great Pyramid was originally built as a power generator approximately 30,000 years ago, but it was not the type of electricity we know today, but I think it's the sort that Tesla knew all about. It was enlarged at one point. It was not covered in limestone at this point either. That came much later with the dynastic Egyptians. Then, after thousands of years, disaster struck, and it was flooded and disabled. The dangerous parts were removed by the ancients, and the place was abandoned. The water levels eventually returned to a good level, and the developing human groups of the area moved in, and they adopted these ancient sites. Some of the ancients actually returned in an attempt to help the people of the area become more civilized. The Great Pyramid was adapted by the ancients into a place of spiritual development, healing, and learning. The developing culture was unable to eliminate their warrior aspects or their thirst for blood. They combined their primitive gods with these real people, the ancients, who were trying to help them. Some very unpleasant things occurred along the way, and the ancients decided to step away. But they still remained at a distance. Eventually, the developing culture was able to cut stone and even had some of the residual tech from the original inhabitants. Each of the ancient sites tended to be adopted by a leader, a pharaoh, who renovated, beautified, and made the place their own. In essence, they were making it a place where their legacy was permanently linked to that of the ancients. Many collected any artifact that they could find that was known to be from the ancients, and were even buried with as many of these as they possibly could. Names were scratched into some of these objects so that no one else could claim them in the future. And this is just a very tiny part of the things I've seen in my dreams. There were no aliens, no gods required, just real people with better technology. So that was my post, but I realised that there's still some questions left over from the original post, so I'd like to address those now. No mummies have ever been found inside. Well, that's because the mummies of those leaders were buried somewhere else, and it was never intended for it to be a place for them to be buried. It was a place that would link them to the ancients forever. There were no hieroglyphs or inscriptions, because they were scared of putting such in places like that. They weren't scared to scratch them into the things like bowls and statues, but in terms of the actual buildings of the ancients, that was a different kettle of fish. So, in summary, the Great Pyramid, in my opinion, was a form of power plant, which later became a vibrational healing center. And after that, it got renovated and the beautiful Tura limestone got put on it by the dynastic Egyptians. But the other pyramids had some very interesting purposes as well, ranging from the creation of chemicals through to places to do some unusual experiments. I've had a whole heap of weird dreams on that subject. Some that get a bit confusing and difficult for me to interpret, but I know that some of the stuff they did wasn't particularly nice. So, anyway, that's another story, and a very long one at that. So, I just thought I'd share that with you, because not only did I think that it was a wonderful summary that Mary did of the way people view the Great Pyramid, but also it just created these questions that I just felt compelled to answer. So I hope you enjoyed Mary's post as much as I did. And if you're on Facebook, if you have the opportunity, you should try following her, because she does the best posts. And I hope you also enjoyed my response. And catch you on the next episode. Bye.